Hi, it's Steve. Today we're going to show you how to change the outer tub on your front load washer, and it's a really easy job. All we're going to need is a number 20 Torx screwdriver, a 7mm nut driver or socket and ratchet. We'll also need a couple of flat blade screwdrivers, one very small and a medium sized one. You may also need a pair of needle nose pliers. We'll need a 13mm socket and ratchet with a short extension, as well as a 10mm socket with an extension and ratchet, and either a soft-faced hammer or a small ball peen hammer. Let me show you how we do it. Now, to do this repair, first of all, we'll need to disconnect the power. So simply pull the plug on it. And we're also going to need to pull that out far enough that we can access the back of the washer so that we can remove the top, and then most of the rest of the work will take place from the front, although we will need access to both sides, so get it in a spot where you can work on it. So we'll start by removing the top, and across the back there are 3 screws that secure that to the cabinet. You can use either the number 20 Torx screwdriver or the 7mm nut driver. Once you remove those 3 screws, just slide the top back about 1/2 inch and then lift it off. Now we'll also need to remove the lower access panel, and again there are 3 screws that secure that to the cabinet, and they are either a number 20 Torx or a 7mm socket. And just lift that panel away from the bottom and remove it. Now next we'll remove the front console. So we'll start by pulling the soap drawer out, and then just depress the locking tab at the back to release it and remove it completely. Next there is a single screw on the far left side here. It's a number 20 Torx, so remove that screw. And next we can reach inside. There's a tab that secures the side of that control panel. So just depress that tab and then just push out slightly on the bottom. And there are 3 tabs across the top we can lift that control panel off of, or use a flat blade screwdriver and just gently release it. And once we have both sides in the top released, we can then open the door, and using our flat blade screwdriver, just locate a little rectangular slot in the center, and then insert your screwdriver in there and lift up on a plastic tab to release the console. We can then lift that up and out of the way. Now if you wish, we can disconnect the harness that is attached to that control panel, and it feeds back into the electronic module. So we'll just locate that connector on the side, lift up on the locking tab, and then pull that harness away, and then just unfasten that ribbon connector from the holders along the edge of the cabinet. And we can pull it straight out through the front, and then we'll set that whole assembly aside. Now next we'll open the door up, and we'll remove 3 screws that secure the door lock and door switch assembly. Now these 3 screws have a built-in flat washer on them, so remember to keep those separate. Next we'll take a flat blade screwdriver, and we're going to go in underneath the bottom edge of that front bellows, and you'll find a spring in about the 6 o'clock position, and it has a loop on the right hand side. We're just going to fit that end of that flat blade into that loop, pull a little tension on that spring, then we'll release that wire clamp and we'll set that aside. We can then just take that boot and roll it off of the front of the cabinet, and then we'll tuck it back inside the opening. Now next we'll remove 2 screws at the bottom of the front panel, one on either side, using either their number 20 Torx or the 7mm nut driver. And then as we support the weight of that front panel, we'll remove 2 more screws at the top. Now with both screws removed, we're going to pull out on the bottom of that front panel. Just let it drop down. Then we'll remove it and set it aside. Now next we can lift this door lock assembly off of its holder and pull it out of the way. We can also remove that bellows from the inlet tube So while supporting that tube, just roll the bellows away from it. And then take our 7mm nut driver or socket with ratchet, and we're going to remove this clamp that holds the bellows to the outer tub. So just loosen that clamp enough that we can lift it off, and then set that aside. Well, next we'll want to remove this inlet tube, and it just has a friction fit into the soap box. So just carefully work that back and forth and then pull it off. Now next we'll remove the soap dispenser housing. So we'll remove 2 number 20 Torx screws, one in the top right front and one right on the top. Disconnect the hose that goes to the top of the tub. So simply compress it and pull it up through the opening. Now next we can take that whole assembly and we'll just carefully push it straight back. There's a little locating tab that attaches to the side of the cabinet. So once we get back far enough, that'll pull out of that little keyhole slot. You can either disconnect one hose fitting at the back or just let it drape over the side. And next pull that bellows completely off of the outer tub. We'll set it aside. Then we're going to remove both the bottom weight and the top weight. And they're held in place with the 13mm bolts. We're using a ratchet and a socket. We'll remove those. Now on the bottom weight, don't rely on that center one to hold it in place. So we'll take it out next. And just remember to support it as you remove the bolt. Now you may have to pull down slightly on that tub to access that top bolt. And once we've removed those 3 bolts, we can lift that weight off from the top. And again, it's fairly heavy. Let's make sure we have a firm grip on it. And then we'll set it aside. Now next we'll want to disconnect the wire harness that goes to the heater. So we'll unplug the connections to the terminals on the heater and the sensor, as well as the ground terminal. And then you could either cut these wire ties or take these small flat blade screwdriver and just release them and pull them free. Now if you have difficulty releasing that wire tie, you can also just detach it from the tub as well. It just has an arrowhead fastener that pushes into the tub. So if you depress the back side of those arrowheads, you should be able to pull it out through. So just use a pair of pliers or a flat blade screwdriver just to press those enough that it'll fit out through. And remember to remove that ground wire so it's clear. Now next we can remove the 2 front shocks, and again using either of the flat blade screwdrivers, we're just going to depress that little locking tab, and then we'll rotate them counterclockwise, and then pull them down out of the outer tub, and then just push those back out of the way. Now next, we'll need to remove all of these clips that hold the front of the tub to the rear of the tub, and you may want to mark the location of each of those before you remove them. So with a permanent marker, we'll just make an indication where each of those clips are, and we'll make the mark on the rear tub. You could also take a picture of it with a digital camera. We just want to make sure that we have those locations marked so that we can get them back where they belong. And once we have all of those locations marked, we'll take a flat blade screwdriver, and we're just going to go in one end of those clips and pry them off. Now when you get in the areas around the side of the tub, there should be enough room that you can pull the tub to either side to give yourself a little more room to pry those off. Now after we've removed all of those clips, you should be able to pull that tub forward to disengage it from the rear tub. Now before we remove that last clip that holds that tub on there, we should also remove the heater assembly. So using our 10mm socket, we'll just loosen that center bolt, And then just take your flat blade screwdriver and go in under the edge. Just give it a gentle pry, break it free. Now once we've got all the spring clips removed, we can next disconnect the two tabs on the side, and then we'll carefully pull that assembly out through the front, keeping in mind that the heater is attached at the bottom. We don't want to damage that. Now before we remove the final spring clips that secure those two tubs together, we suggest that you remove this top support piece that allows you a little more clearance to pull it out through the front. Now there are 3 screws on either side, 2 across the top and 1 through the front. So just lift that off and set it aside. Now we can remove any remaining clips, and then we'll also want to depress the 2 tabs on either side of the tub front. You may need your flat blade screwdriver to do that. Then pull it straight off, keeping in mind that the heater element is still attached to the front, and we don't want to damage that. We can now take that out far enough that we can remove the heater. We'll use the 10mm socket and ratchet. Just loosen that nut completely off, and that will allow us to force the rubber out through the opening and pull it completely through, and then we'll set that aside to install on the new tub. We can then discard the old tub. Now next we'll remove the old gasket that goes between the 2 tubs. So just take a flat blade screwdriver, go in any area there, pry it out, and then just peel it out all the way around the tub. And then we can discard that. Now before we install a new one, just do a quick inspection and make sure that there's no crud or soap buildup in that area anywhere. And then we'll fit the new one into place. And we want to try to install that without stretching it in any area. So just very gently press it into the opening. Once we've got it completely around the perimeter of the tub, you just push it into place. Now once we have it all the way around the edge of that tub, we can then just press it into place. Now if we didn't remove both of those wire tie clips from the tub, we'll do so now. Again, we'll just depress those little arrowhead tabs and pull it completely out and set that aside so we can put it on the new one. We can now discard the old tub. Now in preparation for installing the new tub, we want to make sure that that area is in good shape, that there's no chips or anything on that part. And if we've removed any of those wire ties, we'll need to reinsert those into the tub. It's easier to do it with the tub off of the machine. Now next we're going to line that tub front up with the rear tub, and we'll make sure that we engage both of those tabs in the slots on the side. Now once we have both of those engaged, tabs engaged, just do a quick check around the perimeter, make sure everything is lined up, and then we'll start to install some of the clips just to hold it in place. We'll put one of them on the top here first. Now once we have the tubs pressed firmly together, we'll take one of those spring clips and we'll tap it in place with a hammer. Now with the tubs pressed firmly together, we can take one of those clips and tap it into place. And if you have some difficulty in compressing those 2 tubs together, take a pair of channel lock pliers and then squeeze both of those flanges together, and that will help you get one started. Now that we've got a clip on the top just to hold that in place, we'll move down to the bottom, and this little wire raceway may be in your way, so just release the little tabs on either side that hold that to the frame. Then we can kind of tuck that down and give ourselves a little more room. And this is where a locking pair of pliers will come in handy. We're just going to carefully select a spot that we can squeeze that tub together, and use caution. Make sure that the jaws on the pliers are not too sharp. You could also use a squeeze type wood clamp. You could also use a C-clamp for this application as well. We just want to pull that tub together without putting too much pressure on it, just enough to hold it together until we can tap one of the clips into place. And just make sure that those spring clips are fully inserted onto the edge of the tub. And then we'll continue to work our way around the rest of the bottom and the top, and then we'll go to the sides. Now, a little trick to putting these on in the really tight spots is to just fit one edge in and then kind of roll it over, and then we can tap it in place. And as we get into tighter spots, it does become a little more difficult. But again, if you hook one side in and then kind of roll it over, and then tap it into place. And once we have them all in place, just do a thorough check all the way around and make sure that they're firmly in place. Now we can put the heater back on. Now before we install that heater, we'll want to just moisten that gasket area and clean any of the crud off at first. And we'll just moisten it with some water. That will allow it to slide in there a little easier. Now when we tighten that nut, we'll actually pull that bracket, those two brackets together, and compress that rubber and swell it out to seal the area off. So make sure that we have the terminals pointing down. Now when we're installing this element, the curved end of it will fit into a metal bracket that sits at the back. So we need to make sure that we put it in straight. When you feel it contact that bracket, just make sure that it won't tilt up or down at the far end. We know that it's in place, and then we can push it firmly into the tub. And once we've got it flush with the face of that support, we can then tighten that 10mm nut. Now when reinstalling the element, you'll note that there's a rubber gasket that fits into the opening of the tub. So first we're going to want to lubricate that with either some water or some liquid dish detergent, something that will allow it to slide into that opening easier. As we tighten that nut, that will compress those two metal pieces together and swell that rubber out to seal it off. Now on the curved end of the element, you'll note, if you look through that opening, you'll see a metal bracket in there, and that element has to fit into that to support it so that it doesn't drop down and touch the tub. Now that's the wire bracket that heater element will fit into. You'll see it's curved on both sides, and that's where the curve of the element will fit into, on that side and again over here. And you'll know that when you push the element in, you'll feel it fit into that area, and then you can force it in the rest of the way. And you'll be able to feel it to know that it's sitting in that housing, as it won't go up or down at the back end of it. So once we've got it lined up, and we're going to firmly press that into the tub, making sure that it's all the way in. Now to make sure that we have that element firmly into the tub, just take your flat blade screwdriver and go around the edge, being careful not to contact the end of the element, and then give that a couple of taps. Verify that it is in all the way. Then we'll tighten that 10mm nut. Next, we'll reinstall the harness to that heater, and as well, we'll reinstall those wire tie clips into the openings in the tub if you've removed them. Make sure the terminals to the heater are secure, and that we have the ground wire firmly attached. The harness for the sensor, make sure that's nice and tight. And then reroute that ground wire through the 2 slots on the bottom of the tub. You can then put that wire raceway back into position. Snap that into the little square openings on that cross frame support. And now we're ready to put the shocks back in place. We'll just line those up, fit them through the opening in the tub, and rotate them till the little locking tabs engage. Now we'll put the counterweights back on. So we'll take our bottom weight, and we're going to line that up with the mounting tabs. While we're supporting that in position, we'll start those 2 end bolts and then tighten those securely. Install the center one on the bottom. And now we'll put the top one on. We'll set the top one into position. Make sure all 3 bolt holes line up. And then we'll tighten those securely. Well, next we'll put the support piece across the front at the top. Now there are little locator tabs on either side that will fit into 2 rectangular openings. So make sure that those line up. And then reinstall the screws. Next we'll reinstall the soap dispenser housing. So we'll engage this tab on the side with that keyhole slot on the side of the cabinet. And we'll carefully slide it through the opening until the screw hole in the top lines up. Install that screw and then the one through the front. And we'll reinsert the hose into the top of the tub, making sure that we keep it lined up. So we'll push the whole portion of the, we'll insert the whole end of that hose into the opening in the tub. And we'll line it up carefully, and then just pull the top portion of it up until it locks in place. Next we can put the bellows and the clamp back on the front tub. Now when installing the bellows, you'll note that on the back side of it there is a rib all the way around that will fit into a V groove on the face of that tub front. There's also a little locating tab right at the very top. That will line up with the top mounting bolt. Roll that bellows all the way around the tub, making sure that the lip on the back of that bellows fits right up against the flange on the tub. So this lip should lay flat up against the tub, and just verify that it is centered at the top. We'll next take our clamp, and we want to make sure that the gear portion of the clamp sits just below this top counterweight so that we can access it with our 7mm socket or nut driver, and then ensure that it fits into the channel all the way around. Now if you have difficulty fitting that clamp on there, you can moisten the edge of that bellows, and that will allow that clamp to slide easier. So make sure that it sits right down in the channel that it belongs in. And we're going to pull that tub just slightly forward so we can access that gear clamp and then tighten it. Make sure it's tightened securely. Just check, make sure that it didn't pop out of place. And next we'll put the detergent dispenser to bellows tube in place. Now before we install this tube, you'll note that there is a little indentation on the very top of it that will line up with a little bump on the dispenser housing. And there's also a tab on the bottom that will fit into a little dimple in that tube. And it's a good idea to just moisten the inside of that. That will allow it to slide over this rubber gasket easier. Make sure it's firmly engaged. And we'll just moisten the lip on that opening into the bellows, and we'll pull that over top of the tube. We'll want to support that tube so that we don't dislodge it, and make sure that it's snug all the way around. And now set our door lock assembly back up into position. And we're ready to put the front panel on. Now, we've got the door lock on its holder, so we'll next put that front panel in, and we're going to install those two top tabs in behind this support piece, so they'll tuck in just underneath those. And we'll support the weight of that front panel. And once we have the two top screws in place, we'll install the bottom ones. And we'll open up the door. We're going to reach in behind the bellows, locate that door lock assembly, and fit it through the opening, making sure that the door switch lines up as well. Then we'll take those three screws that had the flat washer on them. We'll secure that assembly to the front panel. Now we'll pull that bellows through the opening, and then we're going to just fit that over the lip on the front panel. Make sure it's pulled completely over that lip. Then the flange of that bellows should lay flush against the front panel. That leaves a little V-groove there to put the clamp in. So just slide that spring down so that it fits into both loops. And we're going to position that so that the spring ends up around the 6 o'clock position. Then just take a pair of needle nose and grasp that loop. Stretch that spring just enough that we can fit that wire fully into that V-groove. Make sure it's flush all the way around. Now we can put the lower access panel on. So we're going to tuck that lip up in behind the front panel. And just hold it up into position, put a little bit of pressure on it, and we'll install that center screw to hold it in place, and then the two outside ones. Now you can leave this step to last if you wish. If you have any suspicion that you may have a leak, leave that off so that you can view the washer running. But keep in mind that at that point you do have exposed electrical circuits. Now we'll put the console back on. So we'll start by fitting that ribbon cable through that opening. And we're going to line up these two indicators in the openings on the front, and that will allow us to engage this hook on the bottom with that rectangular opening there, and the three tabs across the top, plus the one on the right hand side. So we'll just press in on the bottom first to make sure that that engages. And the right side, and then across the top. We'll reinstall that screw to the left of the dispenser and tighten that. We'll insert the soap box. And we'll take that ribbon connector. We're going to come around and insert the harness connector into the end of the control board. Make sure it's fully inserted and that the little locking tab engages. And we'll position that ribbon cable into the holders around the perimeter. And now we can put the top back on. So we'll position that about 1/2 inch back from the control panel, let it lay flat, push it fully forward, install those three retaining screws across the back. We're now ready to push the washer back into position, reconnect the power, and our repair is complete.